In this tutorial, we will learn how to configure and use Viz Artist with the AJA IO4K. This image shows a section of the rear panel of the IO4K. This section contains the 6 main BNC connectors. The second and third columns consist of 4 connectors labeled SDI 1, 2, 3, and 4. These connectors are used by Viz Artist for video input and video output. We normally use the top 2 connectors, SDI 1 and 2, for our live inputs. SDI connectors 3 and 4 are used for output fill and output key respectively. The connector at the bottom left is labeled LTC in Ref in. This BNC pin is used for the Genlock reference in. It is also possible to configure the second live input channel as a second output channel. In this case, the second channel is used exclusively as a preview channel. The topology may be activated by setting live input 2 to inactive in the configuration dialog. We will demo this later in the tutorial. This window shows the AJA utility cables.exe. Among other uses, it lets one view the topology in which the IO4K currently exists. Here we see a typical PAL setup. Starting at the top, we see our live input 1 is 625.50 getting sent to frame store 1. Our second live input is also 625.50 and is correspondingly sent to frame store 2. Our output is 625.50, an RGBA format. This signal is first routed to a color space converter here. There it is split into 2 signals. The output fill is sent to SDI3, while the key is sent to SDI4. At the bottom of this diagram, we can view the Genlock in signal, which is also PAL 625.50. In the panel at the bottom, we may also view the video inputs and output settings in addition to the Genlock state. If we click on the Info tab, we can view the version of the firmware as well as the driver version. Here we see the firmware reads FPGA version 13. The driver version is 12.0.0.123. Here we see the AJA IO4K running in a completely different topology. We are no longer running PAL, but rather 1080i 59.94. In addition, we are using our second live input channel as an output channel. This is our so-called preview enabled mode. As previously mentioned, this mode may be triggered by disabling the second live input channel. Okay, we have just booted Viz Artist in its default configuration. We are going to set up the engine to run with the AJA IO4K using the 720p 50 frames per second mode. We will enable 2 live inputs. The first live input will have embedded audio enabled, and the second live input will have its embedded audio disabled. To set this configuration up, we go to the Config tab at the top of the screen. We first select Output Format. We see that the default setting is 1080i 50 fields a second. We will select 720p 50 frames per second. Okay, we next go to Video Input. Now we see that by default all live inputs are currently inactive. To activate the first 2, we select HD 720p for live input 1, and we do the same for live input 2. Next we go to Audio Settings. There we will enable embedded audio for input 1. We'll also keep embedded audio for input 2 disabled. Now that we're done, we just have to click on the Save button to make our changes persistent. It is necessary to restart Viz Artist in order for these new settings to take effect. We will now learn how to activate the Preview Enabled mode. All we have to do here is disable Live Input 2. We go to the Config dialog and select Video Input. Here we see that live input 2 is still set to HD 720p as we previously configured the engine. Simply click Inactive on Live 2. After saving and restarting the engine, the preview enabled mode will be active.